Hey, I heard you finished high school. And now, what are you gonna do? If you're like me, when I finished high school, I felt relieved for the first 15 minutes maybe. But after that, a feeling of emptiness actually reached my heart and it never escaped. I achieved my goal of concluding high school, but I wasn't sure what to do next. Or, well, I knew I had to find a job since it wasn't in my priorities to study in university. The problem was that I didn't find any job. Every time I asked for a position, they told me it was full, in restaurants who are always searching for waiters. So, needless to say, I had to change my approach. And before I could think of anything, my father, who lives in Germany since my parents are divorced, proposed my mother to enroll me in university so that we could receive from the German government the so-called Kindergeld, which are like subsidies for the kids of a family. And if those kids are studying in uni, they could give them to us up until we either receive the degree or we turn 25. I say we because it also applies to my brother as well, who now turns 24 this year. So he has still a year left, basically. He's still in uni, by the way. Now, I want to describe to you what my life was in high school in Germany and here in Italy, and then compare it with the uni. In Germany, I wasn't the best in my class, let's be honest. I sometimes had difficulties passing the test. But in most cases, I hadn't too much problem, beside, of course, the language barrier, which sometimes made it harder to understand about anything. But I still managed to come up on top in the end. Of course, since I said earlier that I did high school in both Germany and Italy, I couldn't have ended high school in Germany because by the end of 2020 and the start of 2021, my parents decided to divorce. Still, both of my parents treated me well, and I can say that they never let me down, especially my mother. Now in Germany, I was there from the first class in elementary school, even though I had to start in second class. But since it was a different country we moved in, they decided it was for the best if I started again in the first class. So I lost a year there, and they basically did it because of the language. Then we moved to Cologne. We were in Frankfurt before. And there I finished in elementary school and started high school in the 5th grade. Because in Germany, elementary school ends in the 4th grade and high school starts in the 5th. Of course, technically not high school, since it's divided into 3 sections, which are like inferior grade, first superior grade, and second superior grade, which is the actual high school like you know. But they are all in the same school, so I consider them all together. On the other hand, in Italy, elementary school ends in the 5th grade, and we have middle school that lasts 3 years. And then we have high school, which lasts another 5 years. So on average, you complete your basic studies after you become 18, usually. But of course, in my case, when I almost became 20, when I finished high school. So I basically lost so many years without actually failing classes. Meanwhile, in Germany, on average, you graduate at 17. When I moved back in Italy, Sicily to be more precise, I actually was one of the best in my class, since most of my class comrades were degenerates, basically, who didn't think of school at all. It was like night and day with the differences of high schools. Now, of course, I selected a type of high school, which is IT, by the way, which wasn't too hard. If I'd chosen, for example, a scientific lyceum, or lyceum, I don't know how it is called, it would have been harder, but not as hard as in Germany. Needless to say, I practically never failed a single test here in Italy, up until I got in university. Now here's where things start to get ugly. The major problem I had to encounter right away was that since my university, or spoiler alert, my ex-university, was 2.5 hours away by car, you can imagine that I couldn't study in presence. And since it wasn't mandatory that I attended class, I studied from home for about 4 months for a single subject. Now, since I started in February and the first exam available was in June. And by the way, the subject was business economy, if you're interested in what I do. Now, here comes the first problem. In June, I went to the oral exam of the subject, and of course I failed. I was devastated because, fuck man, I had studied 4 months for a single subject, and the professor even made questions that I knew what they were about. And the major problem here is that I wasn't completely sure that I hadn't responded correctly, since I then looked up on the internet for the answers and it came up exactly what I said to my professor. But hey, if he decides it wasn't good enough, then the response was not good enough. But anyway, on the road to return home, I thought to myself, okay, I'll try next month and see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, I'm gonna give up on this university. And guess what happened? If you followed what I said before, you already know. I failed. This time, I wasn't as devastated because part of me wanted to actually stop after the last time. And now that I actually failed, I dismissed myself from the uni and looked up for an online university, so that I could actually follow lessons which I think are fundamental if you want to succeed in an exam. And let's be honest, they also have a reputation for having a relatively high pass ratio, so since the exam are structured more easily. This means that, for example, they are not open questions, they are more like multiple choices questions where you need to mark the answer. But it wasn't that convinced me to enroll on these types of universities. Other than the possibility to study from home and only like 2 hours a day, I have the possibility to try up to 5 exams per month since they're available practically every month. I'm still not officially enrolled yet, since they're envisioning all the paperwork that I filled out. But by my side, I've done all the necessities to enroll. Now I just got to wait. So I'll let you know for any updates in the future videos. And one last thing. You could have said by now, why didn't you go to Catania? Why didn't you establish yourself there? Well, Catania is basically the city where my ex-university is in. Look, I'll be blunt with you. I don't have enough money for that. My parents don't have it either, and working while studying is out of discussion in my opinion. Because if you work while studying, you'll graduate, if you're lucky, in 6 years for a degree that would only require 3. So an online university is the only hope I have left for now. I still think in the future I could actually try for a master's degree in a more prestigious university, or generically just a public one. Now, my advice for you, if you're deciding what to do now that you've graduated from high school, find a job if you're unsure what path you want to follow for a career. If you do know what and are certain about it, then of course go to university if a degree is required for what you need to do. Because for example, here in Italy, and I guess it also applies to all other nations, if you want to become, for example, a real estate agent, a degree isn't required. And even if you do have it, you still have to do a course regarding real estate. So you might just well do the course from the beginning. To find what you might like, try by elimination and then look up what certain jobs do that might interest you. So first you eliminate what jobs you are certain you never want to do, and then you look up what each job requires you to do and see what fits you more. So that's it for today's video, and see you in the next one. And don't forget, everything I'm telling you is to reach for happiness.